Hey guys, Sean here, and welcome to the first ever official F1 Word podcast. And as ever, we are live on YouTube. First off, then, hello to everybody in the chat. It's great to have you with us. If you are listening for the first time over on SoundCloud, we do record these live on a Sunday evening on YouTube. So if you hear us addressing the chat, it's not us going crazy. We are actually talking to other people. So if you fancy joining us for that, that's awesome. You are more than welcome. I will be joined, of course, by Jonty and Chaz in just a moment. Today's topic, though, it's a good one and a little bit better than we thought it was going to be, to be fair. We're going to be talking about the possible underperformers of 2018 so far. But the numbers, they're not telling the full story, guys. So it's going to be a good one. It could get a bit debatey, but that's kind of the point, really. Let's start off by saying hello to Jonty.
Good evening, Sean.
How are you doing, mate? Are you good? Are you ready for this one? It's we've been discussing a little bit today. It could be a bit tasty.
Yeah, I hope everyone's ready for this.
It is going to be a good one. It is going to be a good one. And also, we're going to be saying hello for yet another stream to Chaz. Hello, Chaz, mate.
Hello, Sean, and it's great to finally get this podcast underway.
We have been talking about it for about 6 months, haven't we, to be fair? So it's about time we maybe did something about it. So, yeah, great to have you with us, mate. Good debate. So, we're going to crack straight into this one. Obviously, we'll come to chat in just a bit later in the stream to sort of get some of your opinions. I've got a couple of names down that you want us to discuss already that we haven't got on the list, but I'm going to start off with Romain Grosjean, because on this list, there are some that we've put up, that I've put on, but there are some that I've seen on social media as well. On the face of it, Jonty, not a brilliant start to the season for him versus his teammate.
No, it's really not. They started off so well, the pair of them, at the qualifying in Australia. And then we all know what happened during the race. But since then, he's just been beaten comprehensively by K-Mag.
Yeah, I think since Australia, I think that Wilner issue, I think that's why he isn't performing, because I think you could tell as well by the emotional reaction he had, because I think he banged the steering wheel a couple of times, and that's just really got him down, and he can't find any consistency, and he just needs a weekend where he doesn't make a mistake and he actually just gets the best out of the car.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest, over the winter, we gave K-Mag a bit of a hard time, and we fully expected Romain Grosjean to come out and just wipe the floor with him this year. But K-Mag's been considerably quicker in terms of races and the better finishes. But when you actually look over quali, there's not a huge amount between them. 7th in Australia for Grosjean, 6th for K-Mag. It was 16th in Bahrain, but only just for Grosjean. He just missed out on Q2, of course. Didn't he set the same time as Alonso back in Bahrain?
Yeah.
I think he did, yes. Had just missed out there. Quali in China, he out-qualified him, but there's nothing between the two of them on sort of the one-lap pace. But it all kind of goes wrong in races. And, yeah, we look a bit, I think it's fair to say, Chaz, possibly a little bit daft after what we said about K-Mag in the winter. I don't know how much of that is Magnussen and how much is Grosjean, to be fair.
Well, I think the reason Magnussen has performed well or better than Grosjean after Australia is because I think Magnussen has dealt with that Australia race and what happened a lot better. Because, as I said, Grosjean was very emotional about it and Magnussen just kind of accepted it and moved on. And that's why Magnussen has been performing well.
Yeah, Grosjean certainly seems to have not taken it. It really is affecting his mental state, which isn't great. I mean, you just look at China. Beat K-Mag in qualifying, and then in the race, he was nowhere, absolutely nowhere.
I mentioned there about back in Bahrain, he missed out by setting the same time as Alonso in Q1, but at the end of the day, he's put himself in that position by not delivering that first lap, and of course, you know, the pace in Bahrain was poor, but we have to remember he was losing bodywork as well. So I kind of look at Bahrain and maybe think we could certainly discount the race to an extent in that one. But the qualifying, certainly, he ran wide in the final corner. He made the mistakes on the laps. He's put himself in that position in the first place. So, you know, was he maybe feeling the pressure after Australia and a mistake the team made? But then if that was the case, Jonty, K-Mag didn't show that pressure at all.
Yeah, it's almost as if K-Mag's taken the anger and disappointment from Australia and used it as opposed to suffered from it.
I think with Grosjean, it's just like in Bahrain, even though, yes, he did set the exact same lap time, look how many mistakes he was making. At the end of the day, it was his fault why he didn't get through to Q10. I think if he did get through, he probably would have started right up there with Magnussen. But again, it's his fault because he's just been so inconsistent.
Yeah, and I think you've both said, he's looked a lot more stressed, if you like, this year. He seems to take a lot more to heart, if you like, that's happened on track, whereas in the past he'd sort of brush it off and get on with it. But I think that pressure from K-Mag, we didn't expect to be saying this at all. I think, we have to give him the credit on that one, but there's not a huge amount between them. I think it's fair to say, the Haas car, I believe, is quite understeery, and that suits Magnussen. He likes an understeering car, doesn't he? So I think that's possibly part of it there. But I just expected more from Grosjean, to be honest. I don't know what your take on that one is, Chaz.
I expected a lot more. I expected him to be the furthest forward Haas at the first 3 races and for the majority of the season. And of course, I expected Magnussen to get, say, or have some races where he finished ahead, but I expected it to be Grosjean at least 80% of the time to be, taking that team forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. He certainly seemed like the one who was going to be making the moves. But now it's just, I'm not even sure he's going to be doing anything for the rest of the season unless he can really turn his head around.
We're probably going to talk a bit about this later on with another driver, which we're going to come on to, probably giving that away, probably 2 drivers actually. Is Kevin Magnussen very quickly, John T, pulling himself into contention possibly for that Ferrari seat next year if they decide to go with a bit more experience?
I'd say it's possible. They've got to know that they could be linked to future Ferrari seats with the links that there is between Haas and Ferrari. So there is a chance there that he's taken that on board. He's obviously going to know a lot more than any of us do about the situation. So maybe he has taken it on himself to say, right, if I can turn things around, I can get that seat.
I think right now, if it's between the 2 Haas drivers to take that second seat at Ferrari, which I don't think it is just between them 2, I think there's a couple more in the fray as well. You'd have to say Magnussen would be guaranteed for that seat if it's out of those 2 drivers, because he's been a much better.
Yeah, it is early in the season, and that's way too early to be speculating and stuff like that, I know. But, you sort of look at it, and let's not forget, we've seen in the past, he did get a podium on his debut in Australia, crossed the line in 3rd, of course, and actually ended up 2nd back in 2014. So there's talent there. It was just kind of, we based it all off of last season, didn't we? But let's move on from Grosjean. I think, frankly, to be honest, I think he will step it up. I think once he's got the handle of that car and maybe the look goes his way a little bit more, things will improve, because he's not a bad driver. You compare him to Grosjean of 2012 and they're polar opposites almost. But another man that's got people talking on social media a little bit, which actually I kind of get, but at the same time I don't entirely agree with, is Carlos Sainz. He qualified 9th in Australia and finished 10th. It was 10th in Bahrain and then finished 11th, and then 9th and 9th in China. But he's not a million miles away from his teammate. When I looked at this initially and you look at the results, he's so far away from Hülkenberg, it's unbelievable. But when you actually go back and look at the times and look at qualifying, which I think is probably the best barometer to kind of measure drivers because they're flat out, fastest tyre, low fuel loads, we're talking, I've got the numbers written down. He matched Hülkenberg in Australia in Q3. He was 4 tenths off in Bahrain, but he was under 3 tenths off in China. They're not hugely apart. It just seems that the races haven't gone his way, John T.
Yeah, he does seem to have been quite unlucky in the races. Maybe with some of the battles he's been getting into, that slight edge that Hulk's had on pace, he's been able to kind of stay away from the midfield squabbling and just sit in that comfortable gap behind the top 3. Whereas Sainz has had to really fight for his places. But like you say, on qualifying, his pace is there. He's never been that very far away from Hulk. So I'm wondering if maybe, me included, people have been a bit harsh on him for the race results because he's had to actually deal with more battling during the race.
I think when it comes to Sainz, I just think this 2018 Renault it just suits Hülkenberg more. That's the feeling I'm getting, because if you look at the back end of last year when the 2 were teammates for 4 races, Sainz was on Hülkenberg's pace, if not ahead. And even though it's still close, especially in qualifying between the 2, it does look like Hülkenberg just has the edge on him in this car and is quicker.
So is your gut feeling then, Chaz, that once he's got a handle on that car, they're going to be pretty much as evenly matched as they were in testing and kind of as close as we thought they were going to be?
If he in the next 2 or 3 races, want some upgrades to come as well, which might help him. If he understands the car, really well, then he should be equal, if not ahead of Hulkenberg, because in my opinion, he is more talented.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about getting to grips with the car. You have to assume that with Sainz being on loan and still under a Red Bull contract, that Renault will have built the car to suit Hulkenberg. It's not going to be in their interest to build the car to suit someone who may not be there.
Do you know, that's a fantastic point that I'd never even considered. I'm just so adamant in my head that Carlos Sainz will be at Renault for long term. I'd never even thought, obviously still under contract at Red Bull. Like you say, why build a car around a guy that's not going to be sticking around? Defend him a little bit for Australia, even though he scraped home to a point he was ill. To be fair, he was very ill during the race. So, to get a point out of that isn't all bad. But he's another driver, a bit like Grosjean, that I fully expect to improve. He's too good a driver. And, if his next move is correct with his contract and whatnot, maybe sticking at Renault and they can build a car, there's no reason why 2021 onwards he can't be one of the title contenders, because he's so highly rated, and rightly so, I think, Jonty.
Yeah, he's definitely got the skills. I think it's just not the team being totally towards it's, you've got to think that the team's going to be largely sort of 80-20 in Hulkenberg's favour at the moment. Because even now, they're still going to have no idea if it's going to be there at the end. It would be in Sainz's interest to stick at Renault because they are improving so much. But right now, he's just got to keep quiet and get his times.
I think with Sainz, once he gets to next year, and if he's still with Renault, I think gradually he'll just grow into the team and will just perform well.
They're two very well-matched drivers as well, aren't they? And I think one of the stronger lineups on the grid. We're going to skip on, though. Oh, Jonty, to Charles Leclerc. We kind of bigged him up quite a bit, didn't we, through the winter, I think it's fair to say, which, to be honest, based on his F2 performance last year, that kind of expected. Another one who I think it looks worse than it actually is when you actually look at him. Ericsson, without that 9th place in Bahrain, there's nothing between them, and I'd probably argue Leclerc has been better.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. He's been quite a way off Ericsson in the races. I mean, the qualifying's been a bit backwards and forwards. They weren't that far apart. But in the races, certainly in China, I mean, Leclerc was all over the place. He really was struggling with that car and ended up 20 seconds behind Ericsson. I mean, that's a huge difference between teammates.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, my barometer is pretty much quali for kind of outright pace on that car. He has been all over the place in Grand Prix and he has made mistakes in qualifying, but he was within a tenth of Ericsson in his first qualifying session. Yeah, he was best part of 4/10 off in Bahrain, but he was almost half a second quicker in China. So I suppose sort of maybe not in terms of the races, but what I mean by as good, if not better than Ericsson, is that considering this is only his 3rd Grand Prix versus Ericsson's 4th season, to be matching him on 1 lap pace, he's got to be given the credit for that. Okay, his races have been pretty poor, but again, without that 9th place in Bahrain for Ericsson, it doesn't look as poor as maybe it does on paper, does it? It's sort of the point I was making, Jonty, on that one. Yeah,
that's true. And well, like you said, we did really big him up over the winter.
Just a bit.
Because his F2 performance, he won the GP3 the year before, came into F2 and almost ignored it. It was almost like it wasn't much of an effort. Just straight through, won that one. What's next? Had all the hallmarks of the next super champion and then struggled a bit. But the car certainly doesn't seem to suit him. It seems very twitchy and oversteery, which I don't think is going to be helping. He's a very smooth driver, and that's just not his style. Maybe if they can bring some big updates, it will make a big difference.
I think with Leclerc, I mean, when he gets it together, as Sean said, in qualifying, he is good. But for me, he's just, and I know he's 3 races in and he's a rookie, but he's making too many mistakes for me. Because in Shanghai, he made 3, he spun on the last corner, he locked up massively the hairpin and then spun at turn 1. And then he had the mistake in Bahrain in qualifying. So, yes, he's a rookie and he's going to make mistakes, but I think he's making too many considering he's only 3 races in. And when it comes to the races as well, I think he needs to be a lot closer and probably a lot better than he has been compared to Ericsson. Because if you're talking about Leclerc possibly going to Ferrari in the future, he cannot be in the position he is now. And obviously, I'm going to give him, a lot more races because it's only 3 races in. But if he wants to be in a Ferrari in, down the road, he can't be in this position compared to Ericsson.
I'm gonna pull the trigger here and probably trigger a few people on this one. I completely get everything you're saying about the rookie thing, Chaz, but for me, there's a driver a lot further up the grid called Max Verstappen who's making just as many mistakes, yet people are still talking about Ferrari and Mercedes as the future, and he's going to be a world champion, this, that, and the other, and he's 4 seasons into his career.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I'm trying to kind of be a bit easy on him because he's a rookie. If he does this, this time next year, then it'll be a lot harsher because, he's had a year. But again, he's had 3 races. So I think I'll probably give him until the summer break to see if he gets it together.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good point about saying if he's still doing this time next year, it's why we were all so harsh on Palmer last year. That was his second year in a midfield team, not a back marker. He had no excuses whatsoever. And that's why everyone was so rough on him. So if he can get to this point next year where he's not making the mistakes, fair enough. But it's going to remain to be seen. I think a lot of it, again, is going to come down to that car.
Yeah, that's the thing with Leclerc. He's one of those. I refuse to get too harsh on him. Like Chaz was saying, no, we've got to cut him the slack. It's his 3rd race. The car isn't the best on the grid by a long way. He does look. I think somebody just said it in the live chat here, but he seems to be trying too hard almost. It's almost like, I don't know if you get that feeling from him, John T. He just looks like he's just pushing that little bit too much and maybe just needs to rein himself in and remember, hey, this is only my 4th race coming up in Baku. Just take it easy, get through a weekend, no incidents, and then build on that from Spain onwards.
Yeah, well, we weren't the only ones bigging him up over the winter. Everyone across the motorsport media were talking about him, so he's going to be aware of that. And I'm sure he's going to feel like he's got something to prove where he shouldn't be. He needs to get settled and get used to it before he starts proving things.
I think, him trying too hard, I think that's one point I should have brought up because I think that's the main cause. He's just trying way too hard, almost trying too hard to impress the people, Ferrari, for example. I think he's just trying way too hard when he just needs to make it a bit more simple for himself.
Yeah, I'd agree. And like Jonty said there, he's coming with a lot of pressure on him and they've got to listen to it. You can't avoid it. They all say they don't pay attention to the media, but it's right in their face constantly, isn't it? So, jury's out on him. Very young, long way to go. Quick word though, Marcus Ericsson, not great in qualifying, but races he's been probably a little bit like K-Mag in a way, Jonty, a damn sight better than we thought it was going to be this season. Not spectacular, but, it's a step forward for him.
Oh, it's a massive step forward for him. And he's just been keeping quiet. He's had a few scraps and overtakes, but most of the time he's just done his race, kept away from the trouble, and just got on with the job in hand of getting the team valuable points. I mean, those points are like gold for Sauber.
I think Ericsson, especially compared to Leclerc, he's got the best out of the car, which is capable at the moment. I mean, I think we have to realise as well, was he ahead of Leclerc in Australia before he retired? He might have been. I don't know. If he was, then I think that's just more evidence that Ericsson in the races so far has just been better and is getting the best out of the car so far.
Yeah, and of course, some of that's going to come down to experience. The next one I'm jumping to, experience that we mentioned here as well, Stoffel Vandoorne. I am not happy that he's on this list, but this is one that I've picked up from social media and some of the comments. When you look at his race results versus Fernando Alonso, no, he's not particularly right on the back of him. Qualifying, he's pretty much there with him. But it's Fernando Alonso. He outdrives every car he's driven ever since he was in a Minardi. Of course, Stoffel Vandoorne's going to be behind him and not going to be able to get that little bit extra out of the car. It's his second full season. And I just don't think, when you look at all the data and all the information that we've looked through, John T, I don't think there's really any case for him being on a list like this. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I had picked that up from Twitter, Facebook, a lot of some other channels talking about him underperforming. And I did kind of think that until I started looking through the numbers and went, actually, no, he's doing really well. He's been exactly the place behind Alonso in qualifying for all 3 races and has been within a couple of tenths. I mean, you can't say that's not good. As you've said, Alonso outdrives every car he's ever had. Look at that Ferrari in 2012. That was one of the worst Ferraris they've ever made. And he was fighting for the title with it. So to keep that kind of pace behind Alonso is stunning.
I don't understand why people are saying that Vandoorne's underperformed. I just don't get it. And I also think these people are kind of underrating Alonso also, because Vandoorne, as you said, in qualifying has been basically on the pace of Alonso. And in Australia and Bahrain, even though, yes, he had a bad start in Bahrain, he was absolutely bang on where he should have been. And even though in Shanghai, yes, he didn't score on the points, that's because, once again, he had a bad start. And that's probably the only thing he needs to improve is the starts. But I don't see how you could possibly say that he's underperforming. And as well, you have to account that the car is not good. It's not a car that is good enough to be qualifying inside the top 10. And only because of their great race pace and because of Fernando Alonso are they in the position they are in the constructors. And if the car improves a lot and becomes, say, clearly the 4th fastest car, then I don't see people saying he's underperforming after that, because I think he'll be up there in 7th and 8th consistently.
He's another one, I think, that's been a victim of a bit of pre-season hype. Not around him, but around McLaren. Everyone was talking about McLaren are going to be the 4th fastest, so they should be competing. But Carlos Barton, in live comments, pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Vandoorne's first 3 races of 2018 have been way better than his first 3 in 2017. Yes, that is partly because of the engine switch, probably massively because of the engine switch. But as a guy in his 2nd season, Chaz, surely that's the main thing he needs to focus on early this year, is just making sure that 1, he's improving on last year, 2, he stays as close as he can to his teammates, certainly in qualifying, and 3, he picks up those extra points.
Yeah, and considering his teammate is Fernando Alonso, he is doing absolutely everything, in my opinion, in his power to, to be performing well and have a seat at McLaren for 2019 and beyond. He's doing absolutely fine.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, you look at the results from Australia, for example. Came in P9, and in the overall, he was only 7 seconds down on Alonso over a full race distance. That is seriously impressive.
He's been good, and I agree with Chaz. I don't think the McLaren's as good as some people are making out. I think whereas drivers like possibly, we didn't mention it, but maybe Sainz and other drivers, maybe Vandoorne himself, have lost out because of safety cars and getting caught in traffic and things like that. That's why I prefer the qualifying stats, because there's so many variables in a race. But despite that, he's still, I don't know, it frustrates me he's on the list, is just the point I'm kind of making, because that McLaren isn't brilliant. They've got lucky with some of the stuff themselves to pick up the points. Australia, Fernando Alonso was never quick enough to be 5th. It's only because of the virtual safety car he grabbed that. If you say put him 8th, which is, I believe, 7th, 8th where he was in the race, suddenly he doesn't look that much quicker than Vandoorne in the races. So, we've got to remember that. Next up, though, is Brendon Hartley. I put him on this list, I'm going to be honest. I have been a little bit underwhelmed. Okay, Gasly's 6th place qualifying in Bahrain and 4th place in the race inflates this quite a bit. I can understand that. But I don't think, even looking at the stats that I've sort of put on the live stream screen now, I don't actually think he's been that spectacular.
He hasn't. I've been going through it earlier, and little things like Australia beaten by Stroll, Bahrain dead last, and we all know what happened in China. That's not the kind of performance that Toro Rosso need from one of their drivers at the moment.
With Hartley, it's, he's a nice guy, but he's just not good enough for Formula One, in my opinion. I mean, yes, he is the wet champion, but I just don't think he's good enough. Because I think Gasly's good, but I don't think he's absolutely amazing. So I don't think Hartley should be as far off as he has been. I think he should be doing better, and I think he's just struggling with these cars, how to push them in qualifying and the race. And I just think he's generally just struggling with the way F1 cars work.
If you look at qualifying, which, like I say, is sort of where I look at things, but he has outdone Gasly if you take Bahrain out of the equation. He has been quicker than him. The thing is, though, it's not just during races, if you like, where the mistakes are coming. What was he doing on the parade lap, if you like, the warm-up lap in Bahrain to overtake... Was it... No, he was overtaken by Perez, sorry, but he didn't then re-overtake him. Well, that cost him a huge amount of time because he got the penalty at the end of the Grand Prix, so that puts him further back. So, you know, and when you look at... I'm using Bahrain as an example because it's really hard because I do feel like it's the exception rather than the norm when it comes to Toro Rosso this season. But Gasly 6th in qualifying, 4th in the race. Hartley should be 7th in qualifying and 5th in the race if they're as equally matched as Toro Rosso and some pundits on TV lead us to believe.
Yeah, they should be, definitely. And I can't remember what it was like at the back end of last year. I think they might have been basically even, but as you said, Hartley should have been right in 7th, if not 9th or something like that. The Toro Rosso in Bahrain was the 4th fastest car, probably. And Hartley was, 5-6 positions below Gasly in qualifying. So it's just not good enough.
No, it really isn't. I mean, he was a little bit unlucky in the qualifying for Bahrain. He was only 0.3 off Gasly's time. He narrowly missed out on getting to Q2, but that still doesn't set him free from the race because his race pace was just nothing, and Gasly was still very fast.
Yeah, and you know there'll be a few. I've seen a few in the live chat saying the same. Is he under threat of being replaced, John T? I mean, people will ask that, and I'm putting that to you now. But when I actually look at the Red Bull driver program, even if he's absolutely terrible this season, who is there to replace him?
Not many at the moment because they're all tied into stuff. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be difficult for sort of the Red Bull parent group to put some money in and pull some strings to get drivers moved, like as some people are saying, Jev. And I'm not even sure what others are doing. Kvyat's tied into Ferrari now, so he's kind of out the picture. So they're kind of stuck.
Yeah, they can't. I don't see who can replace Hartley because they haven't got an adequate replacement, and the people who could replace Hartley that have driven for Toro Rosso before, they've burned bridges with. So they don't really have a choice right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I've asked the question, but I'm just going to bring it back in a little bit here. We have to remember it's 3 races into the season, isn't it? You know, he might turn up to Baku and the next 4 races might comfortably outperform Gasly, and all of a sudden the whole thing looks very different. But I think, like I said, I think Bahrain for Toro Rosso, very much the exception. I don't think that's realistically where they are pace-wise, but still fantastic for them. I'm going to take a deep breath before this one. I have no idea why he's on the list, but social media seem to think it's a good call. A lot in the comments of videos are saying it as well. Underperformer, Kimi Raikkonen. Yeah, exactly. That was a bois, Chaz. That was Kimi Raikkonen. 2nd in qualifying in Australia, quicker than his teammate. 2nd in qualifying in Bahrain, as quick as his teammate. 2nd in qualifying in China, just a few hundredths off his teammate. 3rd in Australia in the race. 3rd in the race in China, and only lost out on a podium in Bahrain because of a pit stop error by his team. For me, the only reason Kimi Raikkonen is not leading that World Championship is because he's either A, been screwed over by a safety car, or B, been screwed over by his team. Rant over. John T.
Yeah, it's very, very simple. Sorry to mention another channel, but WTF1 asked for 3 race reviews of China. Mine was simply Ferrari hate Kimi, because at the moment that's what it seems to be. They have done everything to screw me over purely to try and win with Vettel, which is completely unfair. They should have been looking at the times and gone, oh, Kimi's quick. Maybe we should be backing him for the title, which any sane team would have done.
I just don't understand how anyone can say that Kimi is underperforming. This is the best Kimi's performed since 2013. I don't get that. He's been on the front row 3 times. In Australia, he didn't put a foot wrong. It was just a virtual safety car which caught him out, unfortunately. he would have got a podium in Bahrain if it not been for a catastrophic issue at the pit stop. And then China, the strategy just didn't work for him because Ferrari didn't really care about his strategy. They only cared about Vettel. So I do not see how in a million years you could say that he's been underperforming.
I've got some notes in front of me. I tried to keep this family friendly, so I'm not going to read the first word on it, but it begins with bull. Let's put it that way. Absolute nonsense. I've never been that, Kimi Raikkonen, we've criticised him so much over the last few months. He wasn't good last year. He has struggled, but like you said, Charles, best performance so far since 2013. And some are saying, not just in results, but in the way he's driving, it's the best we've seen from Kimi in about a decade.
Yeah, easily. I'd say he's probably performing better than he was in 2012 and 13. I'd probably say this is the best Kimi since he won the title in 2007.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, he's just come out all guns blazing. He wants his future here. At the end of last year, it seemed like he just really didn't care at all whether he was in F1 or not. And then he's come out this year saying, no, I want to stay here. I want to lead this team. And has sort of thrown down the gauntlet to Vettel.
It's such a surprise when I read that. I never even had Kimi in my mind for that. I honestly thought when, the flyaways were over and I was thinking about doing a stream similar to this, he would have been one of those top of my list but then with K-Mag and Marcus Ericsson. So, what do we know? But it just, I just don't get it. I mean, what has a guy got to do to get some credit? Do you know what I mean? I think, yeah, he's been poor this last few years, but he's been brilliant so far this season. And yeah, okay, you look at China, he was behind Vettel before Verstappen turned up. But at the same time, that's all down to safety car and strategy. Without the safety car, without Ferrari's, quite frankly, cock up in the strategy, then he's on for a podium. Okay, maybe only third, but that's still 3 third places in 3 races from second on the grid, and he's supposed to be playing second fiddle. And you take the safety car out in Australia, he beats Vettel in the race. He was comfortably quicker than him. He was keeping him well behind in Australia in the race. So, I don't know, Chaz. It just absolutely, when I read that, it baffled me.
Can I ask, have you seen any reasoning from some people as to why they think Kimi's underperforming? Like, what are the reasons?
I haven't seen. The only thing I can think of is results, which is absurd.
One of the comments I read, I didn't write it down, so I am ad-libbing a little bit, so I do apologise to whoever wrote it, said that he's underperforming. It's nothing to do with Ferrari. They are not messing his strategy up. They are not doing anything to compromise him. It's him throwing it away in races. But again, back to that first word on my on my notes, that's just absolute rubbish as well, because it's, the strategy. I'm going to cut Ferrari slack for Australia because the virtual safety car happened. They took advantage of that to win the race, so that's absolutely fine. But Bahrain, it was their cock up in the pit stop, and in China, they compromised his race, whether people like it or not. The Ferrari fanboys will come for me, I'm sure, but whether people like it or not, they were using Kimi in China to hold up Hamilton before they all pitted, and then again, or before the other 2 pitted, and then again to hold up Bottas after that.
I don't see how people could say that Kimi has cost himself in the races. Did Kimi, Kimi didn't press the green light in Bahrain. The mechanical, whoever pressed the green light, that wasn't him. He's supposed to react to when the light goes green. That is not his problem. Yes, you could say he could have got a better start in Shanghai, but let's be honest, the starts at any F1 race, it's so uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen. And yes, he could have been more aggressive with Verstappen, but, it's the first lap. Anything can happen. And you could argue that his pace should have been better in the first stint, which I think it could have been better. But you can't argue against that Ferrari deliberately used him to hold up Mercedes, both Mercedes cars, to aid Vettel. And the only reason they held up Bottas with Kimi is because Ferrari cocked up the strategy with Vettel.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about at the start of China, he could have been more aggressive, but we also have to admit that Vettel kind of hung him out to dry and left him for a pack of Mercedes wolves to eat, which really didn't help things. That put him in such a bad position at the start.
Right, we're going to move on from Raikkonen because I could talk about this for ages because it really is annoying. Before I come on to the teams, I've gone through the chat and looked at the names at the start before we got going on the stream. There are 2 names that have cropped up a lot as underperformers, and it came up in Discord earlier today as well when I was talking to some people. First off, very quickly, Lewis Hamilton. Is he underperforming, Jonty? Because for me, as far as I'm concerned, when you look at the stats, he's on about the same pace as Bottas, and he's ahead of him in the Drivers' Championship. So on paper, he's not. But in terms of what we expect from him, could we argue that he's probably underperforming at the moment?
Compared to what he should be doing, I think it's very fair to say he's underperforming, because he should be way out in front, or at least fighting toe to toe with Vettel. But he doesn't seem to have an answer for Ferrari at the moment. No matter what the points say, he's got a little bit lucky, I think, with some of the points. But he's just been off his game, which, well, it goes back to streams we had in the last few weeks talking about him.
It's a similar situation to Grosjean. It's since Australia and what happened there, he's just been very down. Because in Australia, especially after qualifying, I've never seen him so happy. And yeah, he just looks very down. And as Jonty said, I think in a couple of occasions he has been lucky to score a certain amount of points, especially in Bahrain, because Raikkonen was probably going to finish ahead of him, and maybe Ricciardo as well, because the Red Bull had very good race pace. So I think Hamilton he's in a rut at the moment. I think something is happening. I think there is something other that is going on, which is making this worse. And he should be ahead of Bottas as well. That's another thing. He should be ahead of Bottas. There's no logical reason for him to be behind Bottas 2 races in a row, especially around Shanghai, which suits Hamilton.
I will very quickly on this one. I'll take the absolute ridiculous BS fanboy nonsense this time, and kind of defend him if you like. Look at the other side of the argument for him. Australia screwed over by the safety car. China, the team didn't pit him under the safety car. Had they had, he could have gone on and won that race. Bahrain without the gearbox penalties up the front. So, and it's kind of the same with Mercedes. We'll talk about Mercedes as well. Some saying that they're underperforming. If you actually take out all the variables from the races, they've won all 3 of them.
But variables happen. It's racing. You have to just deal with it.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. But if people are saying they're underperforming and the pace isn't there, then they're wrong, because it is. And yes, Ferrari are as quick, if not quicker, but Mercedes are still right up there and should be in that fight. It's just things have gone against them, and things will change. We'll get to the next 3 races, and Ferrari will probably, or not necessarily the next 3, but we'll get to 3 races later in the season. They'll have back-to-back races where it all goes wrong for them. That's kind of the way F1 works. But I don't like saying that they are as far off. I kind of said it in my video on Thursday, as far off as people are saying, because I don't think they are. You know, but I think Mercedes are very good at playing that down. So I'll take that fanboy stuff for this time. You know, I'll get the abuse for that one. But you know, we have to look at both sides of the argument. And the other driver, Max Verstappen, John T, underperforming or just a little bit reckless at the minute?
As opposed to underperforming, I think it's overdriving. He's just trying so hard to be the guy at the front, and it's costing him dearly.
Yeah, he is overdriving. I don't think he's underperforming necessarily because of the mistakes which he's made, which, let's be honest, they are mistakes. He could have had, he could have won in Shanghai. He could have had a good result in Bahrain if he had got past Hamilton and made it stick. So I don't necessarily think it's underperforming. I just think he's a little hot-headed at the moment.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I don't think what happened in China was acceptable. I think the mistakes in Bahrain, particularly qualifying, kind of set him up for that one, and the problems in Australia. But at the end of the day, like you said, Chaz, variables happen in races. And as I was saying about Mercedes, give it another couple of races and we'll be talking about him in a completely different light, because that's, like I say, the way F1 works. But I don't think underperforming as such. I think because China is so fresh in the memory as well, I think it looks a lot worse for Verstappen than it actually is, to be honest, Jonty.
Yeah, it does. I mean, they were just mistakes, and they weren't particularly huge mistakes. It's not like the incident with Grosjean in Monaco, where he's completely taken himself out and nearly taken the other guy out of the race with a massive crash. It was pretty much just a little tap that, yes, admittedly ruined the race for both drivers, but it's not the huge deal everyone's making it out to be.
And I'd say it's not as big a mistake as say Vettel made last year. It's just simple errors that he can correct quite easily.
Yeah, he's another one. We're talking earlier, weren't we? Still quite young, plenty of time for him, but we'll not get back into the Verstappen argument too much because he's another one that you could easily get talking about for a while. One team, we've got two teams actually on the list. I'm going to start with the one that will probably get us all into trouble for being harsh, but Williams, shocking start, quite frankly, John T, absolutely shocking.
Yeah, we were very harsh on the drivers and the choice of drivers. I'll be totally honest about that. And maybe it was a little too harsh because it's clearly not just them. That car is abysmal, to be nice to it. And it's come out this week that they said that they were trying to copy the intricate cooling solutions that Mercedes were using, obviously something that Paddy's brought with him, and it hasn't worked. So how much of that is costing them in race pace, I don't know. But it clearly seems to be big. But that could, of course, just be an excuse.
Well, where do I start? Where do I start with Williams? Their aero and chassis is non-existent. If you told Williams what aerodynamics were, they'd look at you like you were speaking a different language. They don't have the engine advantage that they had since 2014, and that's clear to see also with Force India, which isn't helping them anymore, and that's why they're at the back. Paddy Lowe has designed such a poor car. Considering he's had a full year, this car is so bad. And obviously the drivers are terrible as well. I'm going to say that. I think, a much better driver could maybe make it look a bit better. But I don't think the drivers are being really given anything to work with respect to them. And if they don't improve after Barcelona, then goodbye 2018.
I think it's fair to say we expected them to struggle, but we didn't expect this. I think if we're being completely honest, we knew they were going to struggle this year, but we didn't think they were going to be plumb last until we kind of got to testing and we started to wonder if they're in that position. And I kind of agree with both of you on this one, weirdly, which is very odd for me, but I do think the drivers have got to take a big portion of the blame for this because, or not so much them, but the appointment of the drivers, because at the end of the day, you put, if they kept Felipe Massa on, you've got the experience from Formula One to improve that car. But for me, watching that car, what is it? Stroll says something. Racing was saying it in Discord earlier. Something about it's, they can make it quick in a straight line. They can get it to work through the corners. They can get it to work out of the corners, but they can't do it all together. Well, this is Williams. All that heritage, all that history and experience, and Paddy Lowe on board. How the hell can they have actually gone backwards compared to last year? I mean, we're calling this underperformance, but it's almost worse than that, John T.
Yeah, it is. It's a terrible, terrible show from any team, let alone one of the greatest teams the sport's ever had. It's just absolutely unbelievable. I'm still struggling to get my head around how they can be just so bad. And I'm trying to figure out if there's any one thing which has sort of snowballed into everything else. And I've got to be honest, the only real big thing I can see that's changed is at the top with the change of the Williams in charge. If you look back, that's when the real decline started to happen. Now, what Claire Williams is doing that's different to Frank, I don't know. But it clearly isn't working.
When it comes to just how poor they are, I'm afraid it comes from the top. It's just trickled all the way down. And since Claire Williams has took charge of this team, she hasn't done anything really at all.
Yeah, it has to start at the top, doesn't it? Any other business in the world, and it's the manager that's going to get it if things aren't performing, isn't it? If the business isn't performing, and that's kind of it, But I talked about it in the news roundup yesterday. They're making money. Williams F1 are making good money. Their profits are up, I think it was 30% or something like that. And then they've got a couple of paid drivers in as well to help that out. So where's this money going? Because it clearly isn't going on the car. Or if it is going on the car, it's going in the wrong areas. So I sort of tend to agree on the Claire Williams. I do like Claire Williams, funnily enough. I'm probably in the minority there. I think she's actually she's all right. Unfortunately, I just think she's too corporate, a little bit like Zach Brown in a way, too corporate with everything. But I am going to put a couple of positives on for Williams because, you know, they are there if you look hard enough and wish hard enough. Stroll was 0.2 off Perez in Australian qualifying. Sirotkin was 0.5 off Q2 in China. Just what we've come to expect from multiple world champions Williams there. Anything you guys want to add on that? Because other than just absolutely sitting here and bashing them for another 10 minutes, there's not really a lot else I can say.
No, it's just, I think we're all on the same page where it really does start at the top. I mean, sorry to draw the analogy, but we saw it this week with a certain football team from London. Despite their manager taking 3 league titles and 7 cups, he's still out the door because they've had a couple of bad seasons. It certainly should be happening at Williams.
I mean, you've tried to name positives there, but I don't even see how those could be named as positives because if you compare it to last year, they're nowhere near where they are, and their car is actually slower than it was last year. And I think they're the only team that have literally made their car slower than last year's, which is an achievement in itself. And if Williams are going to make progress and actually start improving and make it more, you know, a consistent improving, they have to make some big decisions when it comes to the management, especially at the top when it comes to team principal, you know, technical director, people like that. Because if they continue like this, they will go the same way as Jordan.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think last in the Constructors' Championship could finish them off. If you listen to Claire Williams and how bleak she's talking about the future unless F1 changes, you know, Williams are in... But then the numbers aren't backing that up, so I don't quite know what we can read into that one. Last one I'm going to go on to then before we jump into Q&A for the live stream. Force India. Now, they were pretty dire in Australia. They have improved. They did improve in Bahrain. They did improve again in China. But they're a team, it's quite odd. I think a lot of people, again, we were discussing this on Discord earlier, a lot of people feel sorry for them rather than criticise them because they've identified the problems they've got with the car. The problem they've got is they haven't got the money to fix it, Jonty. And that's actually, you know, at least they know what the problem is. But the fact they can't afford to fix it is really concerning. We were just talking about Williams possibly going out of business. Force India could be in a lot of trouble this year too.
Yeah, they could, but I have to believe that Force India have got enough experience now to be able to find a workaround. They have got to that point where they've got the guys back at the factory who know what they're doing, and even if they are struggling for that money to fix it, they can make smaller steps towards that, which will bring them a bit further up the field and therefore end up with the money to fix it. The only problem is, will that not happen before we get to the next season where everything will change again?
I don't feel sorry for them really at all because how bad they've been, say, in the first couple of races, even though they have improved and it's clear to see that, what they did over the winter is why they are in the position they are in, because they didn't decide to turn up with a proper 2018 car in preseason testing. And yes, they don't have as much money as other teams to bring a very upgraded version to preseason testing, but they could have brought at least a 2018 car because it wasn't really a 2018 car, was it, in preseason? It was just an updated version of the 2017 car. And I think that's really where they dropped the ball so far this year. They are improving. I do expect them to keep improving. I think the drivers as well, I have to say, are doing good considering how the car just hasn't been on it. But I will say, even though I think they'll improve, I do not see how they're going to finish fourth, especially with Renault, how they're improving.
Oh no, they're not going to be anywhere near fourth. I think Force India will improve, but I think you've both made some great points there. You know, Jonty's right. They should have the experience now to find other ways around this problem. And, you know, I don't know. I do feel, I'm not going to lie, Chaz, I do feel a bit sorry for them. I mean, in terms of driver performance, I think they're about equal again this year. There's not a huge amount between them in terms of lap times, or as far as I've seen anyway, Jonty. And I think they're doing probably the best they can with the car they've got at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to come to a point where they focus on certain elements. They've always been quick in a straight line, so they'll probably set the car really aggressively to top end for Baku to try and get themselves further up, make things look a bit better, maybe attract in some new sponsors, which can help them further on. That's the clever way to play it. That probably won't help them when we get around to Spain, but then it will certainly help them again when we get to Canada, which isn't too far away. It's just a case of whether they can wangle the business side, because I think at the track, they're doing everything right. They just haven't got the backup at the factory.
Yeah, I think the mechanics and the drivers in F1, they're doing the best job they can, but it's just what happened over the winter and the decisions they made over whether to bring a 2018 car or not has cost them so far.
Yeah, I agree on that one. You need to be understanding your car before you get to the start of the season, really, rather than having to mess about with it for the first 5 races or so. So, completely agree on that one. I'm going to leave it there, though, because they're another team that there's not a lot more to say about. Was there any driver or team that you wanted to pop on the list that I've not added on here, John T?
I think we've just about covered everyone, because the ones we haven't talked about, they're strongly holding their own, whether at the front or in the midfield. So there's nothing really we can add to it on them.
I would want to mention Stroll because I think he should be ahead of Sirotkin because I think Sirotkin's been better than Stroll. Yeah, I think Stroll's underperforming considering that he's had a year of experience in an F1 car and within the team. I think he should be doing better.
Yeah, I've probably read things wrong. I thought Stroll was outperforming Sirotkin. Have I messed up? I might have messed up on my stats somewhere. It's all right. I thought it was. Let me just pop the slide back up for people that are wondering. Sorry, I didn't read these before. So if nothing else, Stroll is consistent. 14th, 14th, and 14th in the races. But, well, it's not really anything, is there? Versus Bahrain, 15th for Sirotkin and 15th in China. So they're kind of following each other home, really, aren't they?
But if you look at qualifying, Bahrain and China, as you said, if you're going to compare the teammates, you've got to do it in qualifying, and he just doesn't have the pace of Sirotkin so far, I think, and that's not good enough.
Yeah, I can agree on that. The only argument I throw back at you with that one, Chaz, because we love to debate these things. He smashed him in Australia, though. 14th. I still reckon, I know you disagree, Chaz. I still actually think that lap by Stroll in Q1 in Australia was actually a really good lap.
Yeah, it was decent. It was decent, but I don't think it was, absolutely amazing.
As some people have been mentioning, Stroll's biggest strength is lap 1. He's got a knack of picking up places on lap 1. I can't remember whether they said whether it was Bahrain or China. He picked up 6 places in by sector 2, which is stunning.
Yeah,
he's got that racy element. He just needs to make it last the whole race.
Yeah, very true. We're going to leave the podcast part of this stream there, guys. Thank you very much, John T, for helping me out with this one. It's awesome to finally get this podcast going, as Chaz was saying earlier.
Yeah, it's great. Can't wait to hear it.
It's going to be good, yeah. And thank you as well, Chaz. Really appreciate your help on this one, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's great to get this podcast started.
Should we jump into Q&A then? I think we should jump into Q&A. Yeah, I was just talking over the intro there because apparently that's what I do. Ignore that schedule. I've not updated that. I do apologise. Yeah, get your questions in the chat then, guys. We're going to answer a few and breathe. I was so stressed about doing that podcast, even though it's exactly the same as we do every bloody Sunday, John T, but there you go.
Yeah, well, there's more pressure on it now. Now you know how it feels to be Leclerc.
Yeah, I've spun out and fallen off my chair several times tonight, so...
That's the most nervous I've been before a stream.
It'll be interesting to see how it does. I'm sure people will be fine. It's basically the same thing. I think the biggest feedback is I watch your stream. I'd like to watch your stream on a Sunday, but I'm driving or anything like that, and they prefer to just download them. So that's kind of why we're doing SoundCloud. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I did get a couple of super chats. You'll guess who from, so I need to read those out. First off, Eggy. He says, what do you think about the idea of Honda powering Williams after 2021? John T, do you want that one?
Honestly, going just on the information we've got right now, it won't be an issue because they won't be here.
If
Okay.
you want to destroy an F1 team, then yeah, give them Honda. Why not? That'll put them out of business very quickly. If someone's aiming to do that, of course.
Oh, I don't know if. Yeah, I don't know if Rosso would necessarily agree, but yeah, I mean, I don't think so, because I think Williams, they need a works deal, and I think Honda will end up with Red Bull. So I think if Williams want to compete again, then they need to be there. But in terms of helping Honda develop, I suppose another team wouldn't hurt, but I get the feeling Red Bull would prefer to keep that within the Red Bull family. It's kind of how I feel on that one. And, oh, for God's sake, ST. I'm calling him ST. I'm not reading that username. He said you've gotten a donation earlier, but also Leclerc isn't underperforming. Ericsson is just a god.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yes, completely. Let's move on. Akil S says, what is the realistic performance upgrade expected by McLaren in Spain? I've heard they've got quite a big package coming, so they could make a jump forward. I don't think we're going to be seeing them challenging the top three, but they could certainly just edge out Renault with that one, Chaz.
Yeah, I think if it really works for them, I expect to see them on the fourth row, especially Alonso, because it's his home track where they bring the upgrade, so he'll be good anyway. But yeah, if it works really well for them, then they're going to be very competitive in Spain and Monaco, and it should set them up well for the rest of the season, considering how their car just hasn't been good enough for the first 4 races.
Mr. Tristan has made a contribution. Sorry, John T. Thank you very much for that, mate. Really do appreciate that. Go on, John T.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how big the McLaren update is, because if it's enough to get them within half a second, maybe, of the Red Bulls, it will sort of put a final answer on what we were talking about during the actual cast of the difference between Alonso and Vandoorne, because that would probably, if we see Alonso, Red Bulls, then Vandoorne in the results, then it will answer that question.
Yeah. Paulo Vega, when will Renault bring the engine upgrade? Hopefully with the party mode. Will it be Barcelona? It's not going to be before Spain, is it? That's usually when we get all the upgrades. But yeah, I mean, if they can get a good engine together, John T, we might be in for a proper 3-way fight on power. It's a big ask for Renault, though.
Yeah, it is. And they don't. I really want them to not rush this fancy update.
Agree.
I want to make sure that McLaren get their aero package update for Spain, and then give us the big engine update for Canada.
They
where it
normally
matters.
come with one at Canada, don't they? I think the last 3 or 4 years, it's Canada where they start to actually, get on top of it in terms of power. And if they actually make the gains they're talking about, then who knows? Who knows?
We've got a contribution as well. Thank you very much from Kaelin Strimbu, one of our regulars here. He says, if Lando Norris gets promoted to McLaren next year, do you think he will beat Van Dorn? I'll answer that first.
I was going to say that.
Actually, I say I'm going to answer that first, but I don't actually know the answer. It would be close. I would be tempted to say yes, but people already think I'm a Lando Norris fanboy, so I was bound to say that.
Yeah, I think it would just be a really good scrap.
Oh God, yeah.
I'll probably go Van Dorn, just because he'll have the experience. But then Norris will start to beat him later on.
I've got a question specifically for John T from Eric. He's one of our regulars on Twitter that likes to get in touch quite a bit. And he says, can you compare Daniel Ricciardo's overtaking ability versus Senna's? He says he thinks they're very close.
They're very close on the way they will set up an overtake and the gaps they will go for. But you can't... I don't like to try and compare them beyond that, because the way the cars brake is so different. I mean, back at the start of Senna's career, when he was pulling off insane overtakes on people, you could get away with just launching the car in sideways and deal with it on the throttle pedal on the way out. And you can't really do that now. But he's got to be one of the best up there at the moment.
Yeah, Super Mama Ready says, will you make an F1 word league on F1 Fantasy? I'm not going to do one. I'll tell you why I'm not going to do one. One, we've got one going on Grid Rivals. Two, we've got a sweepstake going on Discord anyway. And three, I can't understand why an official F1 word website, an F1 website would start a fantasy league 4 races into the season. So I might do next year, but not for this year. I know Chaz has got one though. So yeah, follow him on Twitter and follow that one if you want to get involved with that, because that's, yeah, I've got one already. So maybe next year. Why wait for it? It's the official F1 website. Anyway, it just absolutely baffles me. Crazy. Ronak says, if Leclerc moves to Ferrari, could Giovinazzi get a seat next year at Sauber? Chaz?
Well, if Leclerc doesn't really, if he improves but not massively, then I think it will be Leclerc and Ericsson next year.
Yeah, I'm worried that Giovinazzi is going down that line of drivers who get forgotten because they end up having a year or two away, or between winning one championship and progressing up.
Yeah, I like Giovinazzi, and he is a very good driver, but I always come back to, he had his chance to really show everyone what he could do, and he binned it twice. And that, whatever he does now, that will live for him throughout his career. It's the same. It's really weird because we talk about Gasly earlier, and people are saying, oh well, he's not much better than Hartley. The thing is, when Red Bull come to pick a driver, will they look at, oh yes, Hartley finished 16th and Gasly finished 18th. However, Gasly actually picked up a 4th place finish. So, what are they going to look at? That's what they look at, those great results, all those terrible moments, don't they, as deciding factors. So I think that's going to cost him dear. And there's so much talent as well, Jonty, coming through now.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, you just look at the lineup for F2 this year and how close, apart from the winner, the races in Bahrain were. He's going to struggle to actually find his space, because unfortunately the teams really do take note of those incidents, which is a little unfair. I mean, Look at Mr. Vettel. It wasn't a crash, but he's got the fastest penalty in F1 history after being in a car for 9 seconds. I'm sure the teams would have noticed, but it hasn't hurt him.
No, that's true. That is very true. Yeah, I mean, luckily, Sebastian Vettel's done nothing to divide opinion since. So, Kane May 19619 says, how would you approach building a driver team for F1? I'd choose an experienced veteran like Hulk and a talented up-and-comer such as Ocon or Gasly. I think if I was basing on the drivers we got now, I would probably take Alonso and possibly, as weird as it sounds, maybe a Bottas to back him up.
I would go Alonso and Perez.
Oh, we're going to sound like fanboys here, but I would take Alonso as the experienced one. But I would probably take K-Mag.
Contributions coming in thick and fast here. Massive thank you to Julie Norman for your contribution. Really appreciate that. And also to Super Mama Ready. Fantastic. Just to let everyone know, every penny, I joke on Discord about finally being able to afford Kellogg's cornflakes because I'm on the own brand stuff, but it doesn't. Literally every penny, it goes into the channel's account and it sits there for when I need to do stuff for the channel. So really do appreciate that. And Super Mama Ready says, cause you're good boys, keep it up. We're certainly trying to. Seem to be drawing the audience, so that's all going well, Jonty. It's scary times. Hurtling towards 30k as well. So if you are watching and you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And don't forget as well, if you're a regular sub, I need to say this, just YouTuber moment, don't forget to hit that notification bell, because apparently, Chaz, I don't know if you've noticed, the sub boxes are broken again.
What a surprise.
It's fantastic news. Cloudy Balloons, compared to the pay drivers now, how would you rate Vitaly Petrov, or Vitaly Petrov, however you want to say it? Good question.
I didn't actually think he was that bad in F1. I think in his first few races, he wasn't really good. He was kind of similar to Palmer, but then he really picked it up. And then in 2011, he scored a podium, didn't he, in Australia?
Yeah.
I think harshly dropped from F1, honestly. I think he probably deserved to be in a lower midfield team in 2012, which was his last season. He was actually in the catering, which was a backmarker team. He probably should have been in like a, I don't know, Force India or something, because he did do well in the back end of 2010 and 2011. So I think, yeah, he was kind of cut a raw deal there.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. He had a bit of a sketchy start, but he certainly picked it up very, very quickly. And we've seen worse drivers stick around for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And we had the magic moment of him flying, which was hilarious.
Yeah. Jacob Smith. A question that I think has been thrown around a lot on social media, but I don't think we've really said. Does Lewis have to win in Baku? John T, does he have to win?
Until he gets a win, he has to win. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
All of the pressure is on him. Vettel, Raikkonen, Bottas, all guys at the front, they're free of any weight on their shoulders right now. There's such expectation on him. Baku could well be a big turning point, because if he doesn't win there, that gap's going to get bigger and more questions will be asked. There'll be more pressure and it will be worse for whatever his mental state is at the moment, which clearly isn't great.
I think Baku is just so important for Hamilton, because it's not necessarily because it's the next race and he needs a win. It's because of the two tracks that follow it, Spain and Monaco. Those will suit Ferrari, and they'll probably suit Red Bull better as well. So Mercedes might, if they don't upgrade the car well, they might find themselves third fastest at Spain and Monaco. So if he doesn't win here, then I don't really see him winning until Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It has to win. No, because we're so early in the season, it's not kind of going to be too desperate right now. But in terms of his mental state, he needs to win in that respect. And I think his mood won't improve until he does get a win. And we saw in Bahrain, whether people like it or not, he was flat. There's no doubt about that. Anybody with eyes and with ears could see and hear that. He didn't really pick up. He picked up a bit in China, but then in the race was very moany again. I think Martin Brundle said it during the formation lap, actually, didn't he? That he thought it was going to be another one of those races from Hamilton, and he won't. We've seen in the past, until he gets a win, that's how he will be. And the problem for him this year is Ferrari are better than they were last year, and Red Bull are better than they were last year. So it's harder to get those wins, and there is always going to be somebody there to snatch those good positions off you if your tyres go off, if you make a mistake, if you get a gearbox penalty, for example. So it's going to be a lot harder for him to bounce back this year versus, say, 2014, when he could just probably, well, we all know how dominant that Mercedes was in 2014. So yeah.
I've just seen a really good point I hadn't considered. Your neighbour says, do you think Rosberg retiring has ruined Hamilton's passion for F1? Now, I don't know if it's ruined it, but we know that Lewis is very competitive, and Rosberg winning and retiring, it takes away that chance for Lewis to get him back, to prove that he is better, and it was one-off. I don't know if that would affect him totally, but we've certainly seen that from competitive people in the past when their main rival drops out. It's like, well, I've got no one to race now.
It's a good point. I actually got one on Twitter the other day. I can't remember who sent it. I do apologise, and I can't load it up at the minute because through fear that my PC will explode through multitasking. But it was something, we were talking about his frustrations and the way it was coming across on team radio and questioning all of the team's decisions. And a point was made. Do you think this goes all the way back to China 2007? Do you think he has this real issue, regardless of what his teams have done since, of trusting first time round what his teams say? Because he trusted them in China and that lost him the world title in 2007.
Ooh.
It's all got a little bit of GCSE psychology, hasn't it? But it's,
yeah, I mean, that's a long time, and he's had spectacular success since then.
I won't go that far back. I would say probably 2010 was when he started really questioning the team he drove for, because we must remember as well, he put way too much trust in the team in the whole Liegate scandal. Yeah, So I won't go 2007 because I think, even though, yes, it did cost him the title pretty much, it was just one mistake.
Yeah, I mean, but there's going to be a lot of it 2016 as well. I have to be honest. A lot of people think that there was dodgy stuff going on, but the way I see it is Rosberg did win the mind games purely by making Hamilton think that there was something going on when there probably wasn't.
Runners 12 Racing says, do you think Vettel will retire soon? Martin Brundle suggested back in 2016 that he felt Vettel won't stick around in the sport long term. Will he retire after winning his 5th title? I'm sticking with my number for him. 2024 is when I think he'll retire with Ferrari. I don't see him leaving Ferrari either. Well, unless Verstappen comes in, possibly 20. Yeah, maybe, but I don't think he'll leave the sport before 2024.
I think if you ask Martin Brundle, I think his views have probably changed on that, because if you go back to 2016 and when he said that, it was at Suzuka, Arriva Bene came out and basically called out Vettel for his performances because Raikkonen at the time was performing better, really. So I do think that's changed, and I think Vettel, I don't think he'll retire with Ferrari. I don't know why. I just don't see him staying at Ferrari, until the end of his career. I think he'll probably be in F1 for another, probably another, I don't know, to 2025, say. I think he'll probably leave Ferrari. If Ferrari become, the most dominant team, then he could equal Michael by the time we get to 2021. And then after that, I don't think he'll really bother too much about where he drives. So I don't think he'd really care if he went and drove for a McLaren, who were 3rd fastest. So we'll see.
It's similar to a point I made before. I genuinely Vettel will stick around until he's either beaten Michael's records or realizes he's no longer able to. It's either of those.
Yeah. I wouldn't read too much into what Martin Brundle says either. He works for Sky and they show no bias whatsoever. Contribution from Success. Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. It says, greetings from India. Love the channel and content. Really like John T and Chaz's point of view as well. Keep it up. There you go, guys. We are loved.
Thank you.
that's all we need. We'll take a couple of quick fire questions and then one to finish on. Then I am running a little bit longer on Q&A today because obviously we're not doing the midweek ones anymore. So probably shouldn't have said that before the end of the stream. That'll upset people. But yeah, so we'll just take a couple of quick fire ones. Can you see Bottas in Ferrari if Kimi retires? No.
No. I think at this current point, it's either going to be Ricciardo or it'll be out of Grosjean, Magnussen, or Perez.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So those 4.
With Ricciardo's contract being on the table, you wouldn't pick Bottas over him.
No.
No way.
Who should replace David Croft? I am going to go with Will Buxton. Will Buxton and Martin Brundle. What a commentary team you're going to get there. You're going to get some honesty in that one, aren't you? Straight to the point.
No, I'd replace them both with Will Buxton and Davide Falsecchi.
Oh, God, no. Gives me a headache. The guy gives me such a headache. Do you think Danny Rick will pick up a World Drivers' Championship before 2021? I don't think anybody other than a Mercedes or Ferrari will win before then.
But what if he goes to Ferrari?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Danny Rick, yeah.
Or Mercedes.
I'm just going to go bang my head against the wall. It's fine. If he goes, yeah, I suppose, but it depends who's at Ferrari. If he goes to Ferrari as Vettel's teammate, no. If he goes to Mercedes alongside Hamilton, yes, because they'll be allowed to race.
I don't know. If the Red Bull car improves again and the Renault power unit improves like Renault are saying it's going to, why not this year? He's only 15 points off.
Yeah.
And you've got Spain and Monaco coming up as well.
Yeah, and he is a points vulture.
Yeah.
He's always there to pick up the pieces.
I'd love him to. Nothing to do with, being a big fan of Daniel Ricciardo, Red Bull or anything like that. Just to see somebody other than Mercedes win a world title. I mean, same with Ferrari. It'd be great to see one of the Ferrari boys win the world championship, but it'd be even more with Red Bull because they would sort of be a bit of an underdog as well, wouldn't they? Because I'm sat here saying they won't. So it would be good. It would be good. I did see a question that I wanted to... Somebody saying, I think Bottas is being grossly underrated. Had you said that to me in November, I'd have said, no, he's overrated as hell. Right now, I generally agree. He's had a pretty decent start to the season, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, he has been good. Maybe could have been a little bit better, but you can't argue with the results.
No.
I think could have been better, but he's doing good enough because let's remember he's outraced and outqualified Hamilton the last 2 races. So I think that's at the very least good enough.
Should have won in China without the safety car, and if he channeled his inner Verstappen, probably would have won or wouldn't have finished in Bahrain. So, you know, he looks better this year. I don't know if that's because Hamilton's a little bit off at the minute and maybe it looks a little bit better than it is, but I think he's doing all right and I think he deserves a little bit of credit for that. But I'm not going to go crazy and say he's going to be a world champion and dominate the whole sport or anything like that. But yeah, I think better than I was expecting. I think it's probably the best way to summarise that. Fred the Shed, who do you think will be the next new world champion?
Verstappen.
It's the clearest choice. It's the problem is it's hard to think of anyone else that could.
Maybe Ricciardo if he goes to Mercedes and the Mercedes still is one of the best and right up there with Ferrari. Maybe Ricciardo if he goes to Mercedes, but as Sean said, if he goes to Ferrari and Vettel's there's absolutely no way he's winning the title.
I've got a feeling not to criticise Vettel for it. It's very much his team. That was probably what was promised when he moved there. But at the end of the day, if he's having a say in it, it'll be yes, he can come, but he does as he's told. Otherwise, but I don't see Ricciardo signing a contract like that. I can't see him doing it. Looking for one. What again? I need to stop doing that. I got called up in the comments for it the other day. I'm turning into Kimi just without the talent and the money. So looking for one more. If you guys spot a question you want us to end on, just give it a shout. Until we spot one, I would just shout a couple of quick ones out, and then if not, we'll end it.
Yeah. One quick one was which of the current F2 drivers can you see making it to F1?
Well, Markelov should. Artem Markelov absolutely should.
Is it should or will?
I don't think he will. I think, unfortunately, that fifth year GP2 F2 driver thing is going to stick with him. We've seen it before with drivers, but he should be. I think Norris is the next one.
I think
maybe Russell.
If Russell performs better than he did in Bahrain, because I didn't think he was really good at all in Bahrain, then it's probably going to be Norris and then maybe Russell in a Force India if one of the Force India drivers move.
Nick de Vries?
After that, no, because he's not going to go anywhere else than McLaren, and he's not going to beat Norris.
Okay, let's. I think we're overrunning massively, by the way. But let's just throw a hypothetical out there quickly. Then we'll finish on this one. Let's say Vandoorne doesn't step it up for the rest of the season. Alonso decides he's off. Why not Norris and de Vries? It'd be a bloody huge gamble to put 2 rookies in there, but McLaren, why not? Probably that exact reason. It's a gamble. They don't do gambles, do they? But
I don't think Norris will be that much of a gamble.
No, I don't. I think 2 rookie drivers in that team, considering the pressure they have, even though they're not at the top, would just be too much. If Alonso and Vandoorne went, it would probably be Norris and Bottas, maybe. I don't know why. I just see Bottas at McLaren. I don't know if it's because McLaren have experience with finished drivers, but I just see him going towards McLaren if he gets dropped from Mercedes.
Yeah, there's also with that hypothetical situation, you could look at Force India and saying how Perez isn't really underperforming, but he's certainly not being the team player that they need. They liked him at McLaren. Yeah. He could go back there as the experienced driver with one of the rookies coming up.
Did not have his chance though. That was I think we said that a few times about Perez, haven't we? He kind of had his chance with a big team in many ways, but he was still young.
Alonso.
I mean, he was still exactly. Yeah.
Car was
Tough one.
rubbish. We have to consider that as well.
Yeah.
Car was absolutely terrible. It was no better than the Force India that year.
Well, was the car terrible? It had a Mercedes engine and the best chassis in F1.
Nah, come on.
I'm joking. I'm not slamming him. I'm just joking. But yeah, getting in on the meme before we end here. One driver I will say, keep an eye on this season in F2 is Max Gunther, or Gunther, however you want to pronounce it. I think it is Gunther, but yeah. Was very impressive in Euro F3 last year, and missed out on the title, but he was racing Lando Norris, who pretty much dominated that series. And he's a quick guy, and he showed that he's not half bad in F2 either. I think he got reverse grid pole, was it? I know, which is an 8th place finish, but for a debut, aside, take Norris's aside, that's pretty solid. So yeah. ST's right, Sete Camera as well.
Yeah, he was good.
Sorry, John T.
Yeah, and didn't Gunther come home 3rd or 4th in race 2? So it was good showing on a debut.
I think we'll end it there because we've been going for like an hour and 20 minutes. Like I said, I was intending to overrun a bit today because obviously there's the podcast bit we're recording and not really interacting with chat a lot, and also we don't do the Wednesday streams anymore. But we will end it there. Thank you very much, John T, for tonight. Really appreciate it, and yeah, let's see how this podcast goes down on SoundCloud, and hopefully it's the start of another amazing journey, even though this is like the 900th stream we've done.
Yeah, people like it. I really hope they do. And it was nice to disagree on things for a change.
We didn't disagree. Yeah, we did. Not at all. Thank you very much as well, Chaz. Really appreciate your help on this one, mate, as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was, great fun, and hopefully the podcast does well because I really want it to do well.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. I'll talk to you in a bit, I'm sure.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you to John T and Chaz there. If you are listening on SoundCloud, once again, thank you very much for joining us on that one. If you do want to get involved in Q&As in future, then we will be doing it on the live stream. And if you're still watching on the live stream or watching on YouTube, thank you very much for tuning in as ever. I will be back with the latest YouTube video on Tuesday. We'll be back next Sunday for the podcast and the live stream as well. And it is Baku in a week's time. Let's hope for another Azerbaijan Grand Prix like we had last season. We could really do with it. That'd be brilliant. 3 awesome races back to back will do us very nicely. You can follow me on social media. Links to Facebook, Twitter, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.